this is a general session on applying for postgraduate research in the School of Informatics in general. So if you are here, it means you're potentially thinking of applying for either a Master's by Research or a PhD as part of a CDT in the School of Informatics. There are a few things to decide before you apply. Obviously, one of them being what program is best for you. Another really important thing is to identify a supervisor for your studies. And also a very crucial point is to know how you're going to fund your studies. And then the last point is obviously to gather all the documents you need for your application. So we'll go through each of these points because they're all quite important. I'll talk you through the different programs we have because you may or may not have already decided what is best for you. So the first type of program we have in the school as postgraduate research is the Master by Research. So a Master by Research is 1 year full-time or 2 years part-time. The part-time option is only available for home students. So if you need a visa to come to the UK, you have to do the full-time option. It consists of independent supervised research. So it's quite different from a taught master's degree because you do not have any courses. You don't need to take any credits. You will be working for a year on a research project, working with a supervisor. You'll be part of a research group. And at the end of the year, you will submit a dissertation, which will be graded, and that will be used. So it's kind of like a PhD, but more compact. It's only in the 1 year. It can be a really good option if you haven't done a master's yet, or if you want to maybe start, if you didn't manage to find funding for your PhD, maybe a Master's by Research is a more realistic option. So we have different programs in the school, and that's going to be the same as for our standard PhDs. There are 6 research institutes in the School of Informatics, and we've got one program, one Master's by Research in each of the institutes. And then we have a specific program for cybersecurity, privacy, and trust. How you decide which program to go to, it's not really the title of the program that's important. The most important thing is that before you apply, you identify the supervisor you want to work with. And then depending on where that supervisor is based, in which research institute, this is the program you're going to apply for. For Masters by Research, we don't have any scholarships available. So in some cases, maybe you will have a supervisor who has funding, but most of our Masters by Research students are self-funded. So that's the first type of program. Then we've got our standard PhD. It's pretty much the same principle as for the Masters by Research, in that we have one PhD program per institute, and then the cybersecurity program. It's the same principle in that there are no courses to take for credits. It's all independent supervised research. And in terms of the length, it's 3 years full-time or 6 years part-time. We do have funding available for PhDs. So this year we have a little bit less funding available than in good years. It's not a good year for funding for our standards PhD, but we will have 6 to 8 studentships available, with about 30% of these being available for all students, whether they are home or international. And part of these studentships will be only available for home students because of funders' requirements. The funder requirement being EPSA, the Engineering and Physical Science Research Council. It's a UK-based part of the government, basically, and so they reserve 70% of their funding for home students. So that's our standard PhD. So very similar to Masters by Research, but with better funding options. And then the third type of program we have is all of our CDTs, the Centers for Doctoral Training. They're all PhD with integrated study. So what this means is that they are longer. The full-time is 4 years, and they consist of essentially a thesis like that of the standard PhD. So you've got 3 years worth of independent research, and you've got an extra year to account for the fact that you need to take 180 credits of taught courses during the CDT. So depending on the program, there are different structures. Some of the CDTs, the quantum informatics one, for instance, you take 180 credit of courses in the first year. And then for most of the others, you take your credits across 2 or 3 years. So you kind of make your own program. Of course, if you're admitted, you get plenty of help from the program team to help you design your own little journey. With Centers for Doctoral Training, you also have compulsory cohort activities. So they are quite different from a standard PhD. And on a standard PhD, you're part of a research group, you're part of an institute, but you're very much like an independent researcher. On a CDT, you're going to be admitted with a cohort of 12 to 16 students, and you will spend a lot of time together. So if you're not very sociable, which is fine, I'm not myself, maybe CDTs isn't for you. CDTs can be really good if you want to apply and you haven't done either you haven't done a master's degree, or you feel that you've got some skills gaps for which you would need to take some courses. It really gives you a good training. You get the courses to just build up your skills before really throwing yourself into the research side. If you're just ready to go and you just want to do research, you don't want to attend courses, then a standard PhD is probably best for you. So currently we've got 5 recruiting CDTs in the school, except actually one of them has already closed recruitment, and that's the robotics CDT, which is led by Harriet Watt. They closed, I think, about 5 days ago. So we have 4 CDTs with applications open. So machine learning systems with a deadline in December, I think the 11th. And then responsible NLP, AI, artificial intelligence for biomedical innovation, quantum informatics have deadlines in January. If you apply for a CDT, so I think my next slide is probably about applying in general and maybe information that will apply for institute PhDs. If you want to apply for a CDT, it's really important that you read the website for that specific program, because they have different requirements. They want to see different documents. Most of them don't really want a research proposal, so you will have different requirements for a statement of intent or a cover letter. So if you are interested in a CDT, do tailor your application to that CDT. If you want to apply for all 4 CDTs, that's totally fine, but just make sure you tailor each application to the program, because otherwise you're very unlikely to be successful. And if you're offered a place in a CDT, that automatically comes with funding. All the spaces are funded on the CDTs, which is a big advantage. So the next point is about supervisors. So every year we receive a lot of applications with no supervisor named. If you apply for, I think, quantum informatics, you can apply without a supervisor. That is fine, because you use your first year to find a supervisor. If you apply for an institute-led PhD or master's by research, and also most of the other CDTs, and you have not looked for a supervisor, that's not going to work in your favor. The main person who's going to decide whether or not you will get an offer on Masters by Research and standard PhDs is your potential supervisor. It's really important because you're going to work with that person for 3 to 4 years. So it's really a working relationship that's one-on-one. So it's very different from applying for a master's degree, maybe, where we can look at your file, we can look at your transcripts and decide if you qualify for the program. A PhD is very, very different. So do find a supervisor before you apply. I think probably you will have access to the slides, so there is guidance for you on our website on where to start in finding a supervisor. So very, very important. And it's also for you. You want to make sure you make contact with someone and see how they respond to you. You're also going to work with that person for 3 years. You want to make sure you actually, I mean, you don't have to like them, but you have to make sure that you can definitely collaborate with them. Another very important thing is how will you fund your studies? So if we count all of the CDTs this year and the standard PhD, we should have about 55 funded places. Most of our PhD researchers are studentship recipients. And self-funded studies are okay on a master's by research, but we really do not recommend starting a PhD self-funded. There are many reasons why. One, we actually value our postgraduate researchers that generates most of the research papers and the publications in the school. They are really the lifeblood of the research in the school. So we don't really believe in people doing this for free. We like to, give fair compensation for this. Second, fees are really high, especially if you're an international student. And living in Edinburgh isn't cheap either. So we don't want you to have to deal with doing a PhD, which is in itself a challenge, which is in a good way. It's a good challenge. It's really interesting. It's going to keep you really busy and focused and maybe at times a little stressed. So we don't want you to come in and worry also about how you're going to pay your rent, your bills, or needs. So it's really important to consider how you're going to fund your studies. If you apply for a standard PhD or a CDT, it's possible that you won't be successful the first year you apply. Maybe you will be selected for interview, you will be shortlisted, and then maybe your supervisor will tell you, oh, well, I could offer you a place, but self-funded. In this case, we really recommend either going for a master's by research, which is a little bit more realistic, or reapplying the year after. Once you've started self-funded, there's basically no going back. If you are a continuing student, you will not be eligible to apply for studentships the year after. So really, we really advocate being financially responsible before starting a PhD. So this is the funding we've got this year for standard institute PhDs. For CDTs, again, it is separate. So we have a deadline on the 18th of December this year. So if you submit a PhD application for an institute PhD or cybersecurity, and you've got a complete application by the 18th December, you will be eligible to be considered for the funding we've got through the school this year. So that's going to be the EPSOL DTP funding. We have an Edinburgh Doctoral College scholarship, and I think we might have a couple more studentships that are not yet confirmed. So submit your application by the 18th of December, and then we'll go through our selection process. We should have a meeting in January. So we ask supervisors and institute selectors to shortlist. We score, rank, have a meeting, decide which awards you can make. And then we just try to make offers as soon as possible. The process can be a little bit drawn out depending on whether we make an offer. Maybe someone doesn't accept an offer, so we need to cascade. But the most important thing is that by the 18th of December, you've identified your supervisor, you've gathered all of your documents, and you apply. And then we'll just consider you for funding. Okay. For CDT funding, these are not the right dates. All the sessions are today or tomorrow, I believe, for the CDT. Sorry, these were last year's dates. But there are dedicated sessions for each of the CDTs. So also attend this if you're interested. If you did submit an application and either you miss the deadline for being considered for school funding, or you don't make it, there are other options. So through the year, we do have supervisors who get funding from maybe industry partners, or maybe they have a studentship that they got, that the school committed for them to recruit on a specific project. These are advertised on a slightly different page. It's project-related studentships. So if you apply for this, usually you won't need to provide a research proposal necessarily, because you apply for a project rather than applying for a program. You will have an ad that will be specific and tell you, we are looking for a PhD student to research this topic, working with this person. So it kind of does the job for you of already securing a supervisor in a project. But then obviously, if you want to come in with your own project, it might not be suitable. But it's worth checking the website regularly, because these projects are advertised all year long. They don't have like one deadline. We also have quite a few students in the school who come in with external funding. So if you can secure a studentship from your government, we have students here with studentships from Saudi Arabia, others probably. So that's also possible. We can admit you with external funding. And you should always, like, once you have your initial discussions with your future supervisor, it's worth asking them, because maybe they will tell you, yeah, we can try to secure funding through the school competition. But then maybe if that doesn't work out, if they're really keen on working with you, it's really good to just discuss it, because maybe they won't have an opportunity for you immediately, but maybe in a few months they will secure a research grant and they will be able to just keep in touch with you and tell you, actually, I could now recruit you on a funded PhD. So definitely worth discussing with them. We do have a lot of industry connections in the school, so I think we're doing quite well in terms of having varied opportunities basically all year long. So submitting your application. So this year you will have an exception for machine learning systems and artificial intelligence for biomedical innovation, in that they don't use the degree finder. But for all the other programs, you need to use the university platform for applying. So you access it via the degree finder, and then you start your online application. Every time you apply, you need to include all your transcripts and certificates of all your completed studies to date. So if you have done a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, you need to provide documents for both. If you are not from a majority English-speaking country, you need to also meet the English language requirements. So that can be met via a variety of documents. If you have prior studies in the UK, that can be eligible. Otherwise, you can provide a TOEFL, IELTS, etc., etc. I got sidetracked by the English, but actually the English point with the transcripts and certificates is that if all your transcripts are in a different language, you need to provide an English translation as well. So you must include your supervisor name, which I've talked about quite a lot already. You must include the contacts for 2 referees, and these should be the professional emails. So don't include the Gmail address, for instance, of your referee. If you have a former dissertation supervisor who's providing a reference for you, we need their professional email address. Can you submit more than 2 referees? There's no need. We don't need more than 2 referees. If you submit more than 2 referees, we'll ask you to choose 2 to be considered. The requirement is 2, not more. And then if you apply for a specific project, as discussed previously, if it's a project that's specifically advertised, really state this clearly. Sometimes we will have someone nominating a supervisor. We know the supervisor has a project advertised, but it's not fully clear whether or not you're applying for the project. So just always make sure if you apply for something specific, make it clear in your application, just so that we don't lose your application and not consider you, for instance, because that would be a bit of a shame.
On the dates for the CDTs in the
Yes, Ruth has put the dates of the CDT sessions in the chat. So if you haven't got on that train yet, you have the information there. After you submit an application, this is quite important. You need to make sure that you have your credentials to log into your applicant hub. So when you submit an application, you're going to fill in your details. It's going to ask you for your correspondence address, at which point it's going to ask you for an email. So you can either tick, yeah, this is the same email as the one I'm using right now, or if for whatever reason you have a different email that you want to indicate, you can do that. But just know that this is where your login credentials will be sent. So really make sure after you apply that you gain access to your applicant hub, because this is where, if we're missing any documents, this is where we'll tell you. We'll put a little message saying, we also need your bachelor's degree certificate or anything that's missing. So that's really important to keep an eye. We do receive about 2,000 applications per year, so we really need you to be proactive in keeping in touch with what's happening. If you need a little time to get some of your documents, that's absolutely fine. The classic ones will be your referees need another week to upload the reference. That's fine, regardless of the deadline for application. You need to book your IELTS. You don't have your certificate yet. That's totally fine. You can absolutely wait until you get this. If you need your translation, for instance, Federico is asking about translation of transcripts. This is going to be mandatory, especially if you get an offer and if you apply for a visa. The Student Immigration Service is going to need this to produce your CAS. And even if you don't, we don't actually, I mean, as you may tell by my accent, we do speak other languages than English, but we do need documents in English because this is the language in which we operate. And it also wouldn't be fair if I decided we don't need a translation if it's a French document, for instance, because I'm French, so I can read it. It wouldn't be fair because we would still require it if, I don't know, there are many languages we don't speak in the office, maybe Chinese or Arabic, we wouldn't be able to read that. So you do need the translations. The commitment from a supervisor is definitely better. If you don't manage to get an answer from a supervisor, but you know you really want to work with them and it's getting to the deadline, feel free to apply and really just name them, like put their name in the application, and we'll make sure they get your application. You definitely have like better chance of success if you have made contact with them and they've already agreed. But if the worst comes to the worst and you're struggling to get an answer, it's fine to apply before getting their agreements. Okay.